think we're live, Josh.
Yep. And for some reason, there you go. Yep. You're good. 100%.
I don't see. Are we live?
What's that now?
Why don't we
Yes, says we're live. Says we're live.
If you're on here, just put something in the comments so we can know that we're live.
Usually takes a couple seconds for the people to show up because they get a notification. YouTube's not very good at notifying people on the live streams. I mean, sometimes they are, but I don't ever get notification.
All right, we have somebody that posted 5x5. Is that the strength training book 5x5? You know that one, Josh?
I do not.
Dude, it's like the Bible of strength training. It's
5x5.
Yeah.
Yeah, my strength is putting up 12 ounce.
You shopping at Costco?
I think I got these at Publix. This is our local grocery. They're good, man. These
grapefruit.
Oh man, they're fantastic. Yes, sir.
Yeah. All right, let's get started because it sounds like it's working.
All right.
So before we get started, just want to again introduce myself for people that are new here. My name is Amar Shah. I'm part of Client First Capital. Josh and I are both financial advisors here. My YouTube channel is Client First Capital Learning. So if you're watching on Josh's channel, hop on over to our channel. At least give us a like and a subscribe. That helps the algorithm figure out that we actually live and that we're around. Right, Josh?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Give that sucker us. Absolutely.
Yeah, and today I think we got a great topic. And so what we're going to do is talk about some, over the last quarter, what are some questions that we got over and over again? And so it's going to be kind of like answering frequently asked questions, but we're going to get very specific. So what Josh and I did is we got our top 5 questions. And so before we get started, I also need to do a disclosure. So I just want to make sure I get that so the compliance people are happy. Look, we haven't taken into account your specific situation. Everything that Josh and I talk about is strictly for educational purposes. And we haven't entered a client advisor type of agreement, right? You haven't signed anything yet. You haven't hired us on. You haven't done any of that jazz. So let's get started, Josh. The first question that we get is around emergency funds. And, how much should you have is a big question that I get frequently. And several other things about that. So let's just talk about emergency funds real quick, right? So I think like from a high level perspective, emergency funds, it depends on what phase of life you're in. There's a rule of thumb, 3 to 6 months, but you really got to figure out how much expenses you have and how much of those expenses are discretionary and how much of those are, essential. When you're in retirement, you got to also consider the fact that you could have a bear market that could last longer than 1 year, right? We could have like, where you have almost 2 years or 3 years of negative returns, right? What's that going to do to your portfolio, right? If you draw down on your investments when investments are down, that's typically not a good thing. And then the second thing I would consider, so I'm going to do my, top 5 for this, right? So one is figure out the ideal emergency fund size for you. Factor in, all the different factors like how much pension income you have, how much is coming from non-stable sources, right? So then you can figure out what you need. The second point I would like to make here, it's probably just, what are investments that are just beyond cash, right? So looking at money market accounts, CDs, high yield savings accounts, structured or buffered notes that you do with a portion of the fund. So typically an emergency fund, you don't want to have 100% in cash. You probably have a lot in cash, maybe 40 to 50% in a money market daily liquidity type investment. But then you could have 60% in rolling CDs or rolling structured notes and stuff like that, that every month going forward after a year that you have one maturing or whatnot, right? Josh, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, 100%. So I think a lot of people make a mistake right now, Amar, is they're leaving it literally in cash at the bank. And that's not acceptable because a lot of banks aren't paying crap. So we want it into like a money market, like a Fidelity, like SPAX is a Fidelity money market. The Vanguard is BMFXX. But if you're only getting
FDRXX is another one. Yeah.
Say again.
FDRXX is another money market.
Oh, is that Fidelity?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, right on. Absolutely. So right on. So if you got a lot of money sitting in cash as your emergency fund, or you're just keeping your powder dry, man, the bank isn't doing anything, man. They suck. So make sure at least get a high yield savings. I've seen this happen a million times more. People got hundreds of thousands sitting in a local bank and said, man, just move that to a money market, man. You know what I'm saying? Now, with that said, a money market does not carry FDIC insurance, blah, 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 blah. So, but, is there a threat that a money market could go bankrupt? Yes. Is it a likely? No. Could it happen? Sure. But, man, if you're only getting 0.5 at the bank, I think you have a better option for sure.
Yeah. So I guess like the third thing here is placement of emergency funds, right? So like, typically people have emergency funds just in savings account, cash accounts at the local bank, like Josh just mentioned. But you can also have it in a brokerage account, and have it in the money market fund there. You could also use part of your Roth IRA as an emergency fund, right? You don't have to just look at your bank account, right? Was my third point, which kind of Josh, you're intertwined there.
No, that makes sense, Amar. You can have it in your Roth too. Well, I mean, I think that's a good, elaborate on that some, because I think that's important. A lot of people would miss that for sure.
Yeah, I mean, because whatever you put into a Roth, your principal that's in the Roth, you can withdraw that without any penalties or anything like that. It's only the gains that you have to worry about, the 5-year rule, the 10% penalty, etc. But your original basis you can always take out, right? Absolutely, so that could be part of your emergency funds. Replenishing. So that was the fourth one. So now we're on the fifth one. How do you replenish your emergency fund? This is a question that I've gotten, or something to consider, is that after you use your emergency fund for an emergency, you got to prioritize replenishing it. I can't tell you how often that goes overlooked, right? And it goes overlooked because nobody is reviewing their emergency fund. Nobody is like looking at it and say, hey, proportion to my risk assets here and my safe assets, do I replenish that? A couple of ways to do this systematically is, your investments, take some profit sometime. Exactly. Replenish your, I see this time and time again. It's like, oh, I don't want to pay capital gains tax on taking profits, right? Yeah. It's a good thing that you got profits. Take some profits off the table, put it into some low risk investments so you can build out your emergency fund. But I guess the point here being, when you do use your emergency fund, you got to replenish it.
Couldn't agree more.
Dividends, income.
Take profits off the table. If you're using your emergency fund to fix a roof and you got a 20% gain in a position, pay some long-term capital gain to take some of that money. I could not agree more, Amar. Absolutely.
Yeah. So from a financial planning perspective, I want to highlight that we're not looking for the maximum return on your portfolio. Exactly. We're looking at the maximum probability of success in retirement, right? So just keep that in mind here. So anything to wrap a bow on this one?
I think it's all good stuff there for sure.
All right, so here we go. The next question. What are some key questions to consider before making a Roth conversion, right? I got this one a lot this last quarter. Josh, did you?
I get it all the time.
Yeah, so let's talk about this. I think the first thing you got to ask yourself is that, what is your long-term plan? Are you going to live in the same state? Is your current tax bracket going to be roughly the same as your future, or is your future tax bracket going to be lower because you're in this high-paying job now and your needs are lower, and vice versa, right? So you got to balance that out, number one. The second thing that you got to have kind of the second item to consider is that, do you have the funds to pay the conversion, the tax that you have to pay with after-tax money, right? You do not want to take more money out of your IRA to pay the taxes. It just doesn't make sense, right? It actually can prolong your break-even period by additional 3 to 5 years. So typically the break-even period is between 7 to 10 years, and then you could add a 3 to 5 years if you're taking pre-tax money to pay the taxes. The third thing that I would say is that if you're in retirement, you got to consider your IRMA calculation, right? Because although IRMA is a small bump up, it could impact you later in life, right? So if you're not doing Roth conversions now, that impacts your IRMA in the future. If you're doing too much now, that also impacts your IRMA right now, right? So that's something to consider. Obviously your time horizon, if you're in your 80s, right, and you're doing Roth conversions because you're maximizing your tax bracket, the potential for you to benefit from the Roth conversion is decreasing, right? The potential for your children to benefit from those Roth conversions is increasing, right?
And on top of that, though, Amar, now we don't have the stretch IRA rules anymore. So if you're in your 85 and your life expectancy is 90, the max you have is 15 years for that money to grow tax-free in a Roth because of the 10-year IRA distributions.
So yeah, if you're inheriting an IRA, right? Is that what you're talking about there?
Exactly.
Yeah, okay, yeah. All right, cool. And then also, so that point is actually my fifth point here is the estate planning considerations, right? So from an estate planning standpoint, there's no longer a stretch IRA. You have 10 years. Your beneficiaries will greatly appreciate tax-free money versus taxable money while they're in their peak earning years, right? And so you want to kind of balance that from a family perspective.
One of the things I don't know, Kitsos had an article the other day. I did a video on it last night because the article was a little bit off. He didn't write it, but somebody else did. And don't forget, a lot of people think, well, after I retire, I don't have any income, so my tax bracket is 0. I said, but you still need money to live on. This is what I think a lot of people miss in the Kitsos article. Again, Kitsos didn't write it, but it's on Kitsos.com. He's like, oh, yeah, he has no tax bracket now because he has no income. Thus, he can do conversions for X amount of dollars. So he still has to have money to live on, man. And if all your money is in pre-tax, well, that means you're going to be living on taxable money. So if you're doing Roth conversions on top of living on taxable money, on basically IRA money, you're basically billing yourself to take a distribution and do Roth conversion. So it's a lot more than just tax bracket management, Amar. I think a lot of financial planners, they like to look too cute by half. Like, look, we can fill up this bucket. I'm like, yeah, but where is that money coming from to live on? You still got to put food on the table. You still got to go see the Padres play in San Diego, to lose to the Braves. Hopefully the Braves win.
All right, here's the next one. And this is probably for people that are currently employed, right? Can you take after-tax contributions in your 401k and convert them to Roth IRAs? Now, this one is difficult to answer because it depends on your 401k plan provider and the plan that you have with that provider, right? So not all Fidelity 401k plans have the same benefits and options. By the way, we are an approved vendor. If you have a Fidelity 401k, we're approved as a vendor to help you manage those investments in your 401k. So if you need help with that, we can. But all 401ks.
Mute me for a second, Amar. I'm going to mute myself so I can shut my dog up. Hold on a second. All right. Okay.
All right. So employer 401k plans all have rules, right? And so some have an after-tax account, some have a Roth account, some only have a pre and a Roth. They're all different. So you got to find out what your plan provider has, number one. Number two, you got to understand the tax treatment. If you put money in the after-tax account and it grows, only your basis is going to convert to the Roth tax-free. The growth is going to be taxed. Okay, so you got to remember that part. You got to remember there's still contribution limits, right? I don't have it on the tip of my finger. We have this little cheat sheet that gives you all the numbers. but let's just say that the max you can put in a 401k is 70,000. That's your contribution. That's your match. That's your after taxes, the difference, right? So you got to make sure that you don't go over those contribution limits. There's also a pro rata rule that you got to be aware of. Is so when you roll over, which I think most 401k companies now are better at. I think this was a problem when Josh and I were in like 2000 to 2010. They would just send you one check, one check. And so now most 401ks send you multiple checks. Here's your after-tax check, here's pre-tax check, and here's your Roth 401k check. And the after-tax, they'll actually break it out into two if you have a good plan. So say your basis and then your gains. So then you take your gains, put it in your pre-tax or IRA, your regular IRA, and you can take your basis, your after-tax stuff, Roth stuff, and put it in your Roth IRA.
There's a question I got for you, Amar. I got this guy emailed me today. I haven't had time to look up the answer. I just don't recall. He says, if you convert your traditional 401k into a Roth, let's say it's in the same calendar year, is that accessible to you without the 5-year rule if you move that to a Roth IRA the following year? Does that make sense? So now, what was a traditional IRA, a traditional 401k, pre-tax 401k, you've moved it to a Roth. Then the next year, it doesn't matter the next year, but then you move that Roth 401k to a Roth IRA. Is there a 5-year rule on that? I just can't remember.
I believe there is. I mean, the date, how the IRS has it written is the date that your Roth IRA account is opened, right? So
if your Roth was open,
if you have an old
IRA
Roth,
that receives the rollover was open 5 years or more ago, then that's free from the 5-year rule.
That's correct.
That's my thought too. Yeah. Okay. Okay.
And we can look that up to just double check too. I think my fifth point here is, Roth IRAs grow tax deferred and tax free, but you got to also balance that with what your needs are, right? Like you don't want to take excessive amounts out and then realize you need to take those funds from your Roth IRA at that point as well. All right, let's go to the next one. We're just rolling through these, Josh.
Yeah.
All right, 3 key retirement mistakes. And you know what, Josh? We should do my 3 key retirement mistakes that I see versus what you see.
Okay.
And we'll do it like kind of like an old-fashioned like shootout, right? So on 3, what is the number 1 retirement mistake, right? 3, 2, 1, not tracking expenses. You're supposed to say it, Josh.
Oh,
come on.
I have to think about this for a second.
Putting you on the spot, dude.
I know. It's like, whoa, what's
would you agree that not tracking your expenses is a big retirement mistake?
I actually go deeper. I say it's not even knowing expenses, not just not tracking, having no idea what your expenses are to begin with. But along the same line.
Okay, I'll agree with that.
Expenses.
Not knowing what your expenses are, right? Yeah. A lot of time people in the last 5 years of retirement are making good money.
Yeah.
Kids are out of the house. They have more than enough dispensable income. They're not thinking about where their expenses are going because they can afford it.
Yep.
Also, they see retirement at the in the view, in your binoculars, you can see retirement, and you're saying, this is my time to enjoy, right? And so oftentimes what I kind of experience as one of the risks to retirement is not knowing where your money's going.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. All right. What is the second one for you? What is the second mistake in retirement planning that people can easily avoid?
Well, for me, it's the idea that people's spend increases with inflation, i.e. the 4% rule, because there's no evidence of that at all. So people say, my expenses are going to increase every year with inflation.
Well, let's just bundle that with expenses. What I had here is that a lot of retirees are not planning for healthcare costs, and not just healthcare costs, but costs that if you potentially need long-term care, if you don't die, you get older, you need more help, right? But what I see is that a lot of people use New Day Retirement Planner or something like that, and then they come to me with this plan, and they haven't factored any long-term care expense, right? Like zero. And I think that's a big mistake. That's what I'm going with.
I completely disagree. I think more people are worried about long-term care costs is warranted for sure. So we'll have to agree to disagree there for sure. Absolutely.
All right. Why? You don't think long-term care is a risk, or you think it's overinflated?
Breaking my leg's a risk for sure. There's always a risk I could get killed today. But the issue is, what's the actual evidence, Amar? And this is an important one to say.
Right, well, yeah, okay.
Well,
so
hang on, hold on. You don't let me finish. What's the actual evidence there's going to be an extraordinary expenditure for long-term care costs? Not how many people actually need some long-term care. This is where the long-term care industry just pisses me off, pardon my French. What's the actual expenditure that the median household has on long-term care costs? And it's very, very low. So we have about 10 to 15% of the population who spends more than six figures, right? And that is usually accommodated by the sale of their home. But the vast majority of people are out of pocket, and they can cover it with just their own assets. So it's just not, I mean, I'm not saying it's not a risk.
How about this? How about we change it? But how about to say that not having a plan for as you get older? So some people have like family members, but they don't have that communication with family members or what have you. I think we can agree with that, right? It's not just how you fund it.
I don't think for me, it's not one of my top three risks, but that's okay. I mean, it's just okay.
So my last one. What's your last one? What would you say is your last one?
I'm not having a power of attorney or an umbrella policy. No estate planning done.
No estate planning. Yeah, absolutely. I would agree. No estate planning. No, and I put in mine is not communicating your estate plan to family, right? It's just all basically the same thing. So that was a good one.
And those are important ones. So it's real quick while we're talking about that. So make sure, my friends, that if something were to happen to you, not just dying is relatively easy. It's incapacity. Right? So if you have a stroke, dementia, don't know who you are, you're overseas for some reason, how does your spouse have access to your financial accounts? Do you know? I mean, you guys do, but everyone else does. You're like, either beneficiary designations. So they have an umbrella policy. So that way, if you got sued, you have asset protection. All these things are critically important. I'd say I ding about 90%, Amar, of the people I talk to. I ding on those two things right there.
Cool. Yeah, I think those are important, right? Sometimes I find that like people created an estate plan when their kids were young to protect their kids, but then they never updated the people, right? So make sure you have the right people in your plan. Is what I would say.
More. Good, man. Amar, we are spot on there, dude.
All right, here's the last question, just in the interest of time, so we can answer some of the questions in here, okay? So this is what I got. How are interest rate changes impacting retirement savings in terms of the vehicles and stuff like that you can invest in? So I think I got two here, right? I think the easiest thing to kind of talk about is when interest rates go up, bond prices go down. When interest rates go down, bond prices go up, as a general rule of thumb, right? So if we're in an interest rate environment where interest rates are going to start to come down, your bond prices are going to go up, but your income from those bond portfolios would also go down, right? So that's, I would say, one thing to consider.
Yeah, absolutely.
The impact on your emergency fund, your savings, your CDs, your money market accounts, things that retirees kind of rely on as the conservative piece of their investments, those potentially could go down, right? I think another one that people don't consider but should is that if you have a pension plan or if you have an annuity, part of the calculus of that annuity, when you want to annuitize and get a stream of income, is what the current interest rate environment is. Because they take that plus an actuarial table, and then they get a spread of payments. That's how they do, right? And so when you're in a high interest rate environment, the income you can get from distributing an annuity is probably higher than what you can get in a lower interest rate table, assuming the same amortization schedule or longevity table.
What's the counter to that right there, though? There's a counter to that argument, too, about something else. So if you have a difference between a lump sum or a pension, all right, the higher the interest rate, what does that mean for your pension payout, Amar?
the higher your interest rate, the lower the pension payout,
exactly.
because it's inverse. It's just like the bond. It's inverse.
Exactly. So a lot of people say, "Oh man, I have my lump sum." But I hear this a lot. My lump sum has gone down by $150,000. The company's stealing from me. I'm like, no, it's just the interest rate went up, and that's what it is. 100%, Amar, and you'd be stunned. Well, you won't, but how many people don't get that?
Yeah. All right, so I'm going to go to the top of these comments, and we're going to scroll through and answer some questions. Josh and I like to keep these calls to exactly 30 minutes, and that's what we intend to do. Greetings from Minnesota. I think Drutsky's been on here before because I remember that dog.
Oh man, yeah. What kind of dog is that, Drosky? Is that what? Put it back on there, Amar. That's oh wait, is that the Saint Bernard? No, Saint. Is that Saint Bernard?
No, it looks like a lab mix.
Okay,
yeah.
It's a mutt. It's a mutt.
Let's go here. We got. It's great being retired, right? Here we go. Extra money, put it in money markets. Banks are using. I can't even. Our money and to give us bonuses to new shit. Yes. Yeah, and I just another thing that we can touch on is that there's a lot of fraud and abuse to elders, right? And accounts that have large balances, like checking accounts and savings accounts, could actually increase your risk, right? Because those are accessible funds. Versus like a brokerage account, you can't transfer funds right away. It takes a ACH process, and that's 2 or 3 business days.
So scroll down to the bottom. Not much other comments in terms of questions.
Yeah.
Here we go. Q Humor says about might be best to pay your adult kids Roth IRA instead of leaving an inheritance. I completely agree with that, Q Humor. That's a great point, dude. About time Q Humor steps up and waiting for 5 years.
There you go. In the early days, use the Roth, right?
I know.
Even if you're aggressively invested in the Roth, which you should be because you want the most amount of growth, you can still touch your basis.
Yeah.
100%.
Gosh,
there's a lot of Josh Scandlen in here.
Yeah, that guy's crushing.
He's the best guy ever. Yeah, I mean, everybody has a view on this. Our view is that interest rates, there's room for another rate cut this year. But I mean, we're setting the groundwork for inflation to increase in the back half of next year. So something to consider. I found that comment that you were talking about here.
Yeah.
I believe there is a 5-year too. If converted at 15 Roth,
the question was on the Roth 401k though into a Roth IRA. We can look it up. I just don't know off the top of my head. So I had a question on that asked me today.
Yeah. So I guess I don't understand what the big family. See, there you go. Kirk, have you had the conversation with your family? I think that's something to make sure. What if your big family moves, right? Like these are variables that you got to consider. If your son or daughters are nearby, or if they're busy with their family. I'm coaching soccer right now, or helping coach soccer. I shouldn't say I'm coaching soccer. I'm assistant, not the actual coach. But it takes a lot of time out of my day.
It does, man. Absolutely. Hey, so go down to the one that Q Humor. I want to address this one here.
Where is it?
I thought average nurse. Keep going down. That one, the right next one. All right. So here's what I want to address. A lot of people. This is where the long-term care industry freaking sucks. First of all, it's not 3 to 5 years, as Ted says, about 1.5 years. This is about for the people who actually go to a nursing home. All right. So it's not that this is it really infuriates me. They're saying, of the people who go to a nursing home, what is the average stay? It's about 1.5 years. All right. So how many people actually go to the nursing home? And Q Humor, you got to read my book. You can retire on Social Security, because I address this. Look at the actual number of people go into a nursing home. It's not of the people at large. The average stay is that people go. So it's a very select group of a very select group. And it actually infuriates me that people in my business fall for these statistics because they don't know how to read research. It really drives you up the wall. All right. So it is about 1.5 years, like my man Ted said, because Ted's living in Maine, so we know he's smarter than everybody else. All right. Well, I guess we're up 30 minutes.
All right, we're at 30 minutes. Let me just end it with this. If you follow Josh's channel, you should also follow our channel, which is Client First Capital Learning. You can just type it in YouTube. You can actually go watch this live stream and put a like in there. It helps the algorithm. If you have questions or concerns, you can visit our website, which is clientfirstcap.com, and you can subscribe to our newsletter, and also just call us if you have a question.
Yep.
All right, Josh.
Thanks, Mar. We'll see you. God bless everybody. We'll see you guys.
Right.
See ya.
Go Padres.